The Cardinals dropped Game 3 to the Dodgers on Sunday, but perhaps the more interesting topic of conversation happened off the field as Clayton Kershaw fired some shots at the Birds on the bat after the game was over. We'll explain coming up on b-schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Sunday evening, June the 8th, 2025. This afternoon, the Cardinals, they couldn't quite get me to send the tweet, could they? Couldn't get the sweep of the Los Angeles Dodgers at Busch Stadium as the Cardinals dropped the series finale 7-3 to the Dodgers, with the Cardinals coming up short in the finale. Couldn't get quite enough offense, and the moments where they did start to tack on some runs, it just seemed like the Dodgers were there to be able to answer in the innings that followed, and the Cardinals were just kind of chasing their tail in this one. And it happens. You lose baseball games sometimes, but to be able to win the series 2 of 3, I think still a positive takeaway, certainly from the weekend. And the Cardinals will continue the homestand on Monday when they welcome the Toronto Blue Jays to town. But tonight on b-schaeff Daily, we're going to talk about some conversation that happened actually off the field after the game in the Dodgers clubhouse, as Clayton Kershaw had some thoughts that maybe reveal his true feelings about the St. Louis Cardinals. I don't know if those feelings were a secret previously, but there was some shade thrown. 100% there was, and I'll explain to you what we're talking about there, as well as I'll break down the game tonight. Michael McGreevy got hit around a little bit, but showed some moxie in the way that he stuck through and was able to complete 6 innings. So we'll evaluate his start. We'll talk about the Cardinals offensively not maybe being quite up to par, but we'll tell you what unfolded from that perspective. And we'll also maybe dive in a little bit to, and I should never do this, but I can't help myself sometimes. I saw a comment on Twitter where I feel like it just bears repeating, an aspect of bullpen management that often gets forgotten. So I'll spend as little time on that as I possibly can, but I'm going to make mention of it. And then we'll go down on the farm. I have to issue not a correction, but an oversight from Saturday, because Tink Hence was fantastic on Saturday, and we neglected in this morning's episode talking about the Saturday games to bring it up. So we're going to make sure to talk about Tink Hence's rehab assignment as well. A lot going on, plus an injury update, by the way, on Jordan Walker. I was down at the Cardinals clubhouse this morning on Sunday, and from Oliver Marmol, we do have a positive update, I'll tell you that, on Jordan Walker as it pertains to his injury status. But before we get into everything, just want to let you guys know, if you're interested in daily Cardinals content all season long and even into the offseason, b-schaeff Daily is the place to be, the podcast to be, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast. Make sure to hit subscribe on this YouTube channel. Make sure to like the video, and if you like Spotify, you can search b-schaeff Daily on Spotify and find the show there as well every day. And when I say every day, it's like almost every day. And it's today, so let's go ahead and get into it. I'll start with the Jordan Walker stuff, because that was, I thought, interesting from on Sunday morning in the Cardinals clubhouse, was there for the pregame media availability. And I had talked recently on STL Sports Central, which is the new name for Sports Hub STL, in case you missed it. We're going by STL Sports Central now. On the midday show, Cards Central 365. I was talking a couple of days ago about Jordan Walker and the idea that he might be out for maybe longer than anticipated, because when he had taken some swings recently, he was still experiencing some pain. And so he got an injection, and I thought, okay, that's going to be several more days. Evidently, though, things seem to be actually pointing in a pretty good direction again. Ollie said this morning that Jordan had taken his swings, had gotten in an upper body workout, a lift in, and was not experiencing any issues with the wrist. And so if everything continues in terms of his recovery, the thought would be that as early as Tuesday, Jordan Walker will begin a rehab assignment. So if you're out there in Springfield, out there in Memphis, keep an eye out. One of the places, I don't know where the minor league clubs are this coming week, if who's home, who's on the road, or what the deal is, but I think he'll be in one of those two spots, maybe as early as Tuesday, if not a little bit later in the week. And I imagine it'll be for multiple games, as the Cardinals want to get Jordan Walker some reps as he works his way back from just some wrist soreness that he has been dealing with. And so that's a positive update, because on the STL Sports Central show, we were kind of talking about, me and Ethan Hannaford, the idea that Walker could be out for a number of weeks, and we didn't really have a timetable. And I did bring up the name Tommy Edman and said, hey, sometimes those wrist things can last longer than you hope. I do not believe at this point that it's going to be that way for Jordan Walker. Everything, according to Oliver Marmol this morning on Sunday, was actually pretty favorable. So I wanted to make sure for anybody that had heard that previous show, and we were sort of speculating, we didn't know for sure, but just knew that anytime you have a setback where, okay, he's still experiencing some pain and then has to get I think it was a cortisone shot, you worry a little bit, but it actually seems like Jordan Walker should be ready to go sooner rather than later, but he will need a rehab stint. They'll want to get him into some game action before simply activating him back to the Major League roster. So that's just something to keep in mind. Let's talk about specific to Sunday's game. Well, actually, let's get into this first. Let's talk the Kershaw stuff, because that's what I was teasing off the top. I'd hate to wait too long into the podcast to get into that, and we're still only 6 minutes in, so this feels like a good time to do it. Saw this from John Denton's Twitter feed, and he was relaying something that had been reported by Jeff Jones of the Belleville News-Democrat. And Jeff Jones was covering the Dodgers clubhouse this weekend for MLB.com. He's a fill-in writer for those guys, and the Dodgers MLB writer must have been on assignment this weekend, didn't travel to St. Louis, whatever the case. And so Jeff was filling in for MLB.com, does that a few times throughout the season. And so that is why Jeff was able to share this quote, I guess, with John Denton. And I texted with Jeff to make sure this was legit, and it does appear that it was. Here's the tweet from John Denton, though. I'll just read it to you. Dodgers lefty Clayton Kershaw on the St. Louis Cardinals, showing this Matt Adams 3-run homer from the 2014 NLDS in the pregame, which the Cardinals on the video board did do, I believe, earlier this weekend. We saw some previous Cardinals Kershaw-related highlights on the video board, but Kershaw was pitching today, and so evidently in the pregame, you got the Matt Adams home run from 2014, the NLDS, which the game winner essentially sent the Cardinals to the 2014 NLCS, and I was actually at that game with my sister. The Matt Adams home run game was an unbelievable moment in Cardinals history. But okay, so the Cardinals are playing that from 11 years ago, the video on the video board pregame. And here's the quote, as reported by Jeff Jones and then relayed by John Denton. Quote, "I think it's a little Busch League," said Kershaw, continuing, "but I don't expect anything less from these guys, so it's no worries." Woo! Now that is some shade right there from Clayton Kershaw. A little Busch League, but I don't expect anything less from these guys. Wow. I didn't know there was, bad blood besides just the simple competitiveness of things. But that is an interesting quote. And you might say, oh, you're making too much of it. What else is he supposed to say? I actually think that's compelling. Because, yes, the Cardinals have, a rich history, a rich postseason history. And the Cardinals and Dodgers matched up a bunch of times in the postseason in that era. Right? And Clayton Kershaw is still pitching 11 years later after being involved in some of those big moments. Matt Carpenter's, I believe it was a double that he hit I believe it was in that same series in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, where it was pretty late in the game and late in Clayton Kershaw's start, and it was a long battle, and Carpenter, well, he brought Clayton Kershaw to his knees, if I recall. Just the reaction as he spun around and saw the ball flying out toward right center, Matt Carpenter. But then, of course, the Matt Adams home run was a moment to remember. Well, obviously a moment that Clayton Kershaw probably prefers to forget, and the Cardinals taking a little bit of a trip down memory lane, throwing it on the video board before the game on Sunday, evidently. I recall seeing some stuff earlier in the weekend. They must have done it again here. Well, what do we think about this, Cardinals fans? Because for me, it's probably just fair game, right? Like, come on. Are we really going to be too concerned about highlights being played? It happens all the time, right? Prominent highlights between two teams. And yeah, Kershaw's been involved in some of them because he's been around for a long time. He's a prominent name, and he's still on the Dodgers. I feel like that is pretty normal of a thing to have happen. I don't consider it to be any crossing any sort of line for the Cardinals to put that on the video board. And it's their, this idea that when Kershaw says, well, I don't expect anything less from these guys, what does that mean? Like, does he think that John Mozeliak was, or is it Oliver Marmol? Like, who? There weren't even the same people around in 2014. I don't expect anything less from these guys. I'm curious who Kershaw is referring to. Like the Cardinals brand is who he has his issue with here. As though the person in stadium ops or whatever, game day experience department who said, hey, it'd be cool. Let's play this because the Cardinals are playing the Dodgers. It'll be a nice little thing. Do stuff like this all the time. And he had an issue with it, I guess. I think it's a little Busch League, but I don't expect anything less from these guys. Well, there you go. Clayton Kershaw reveals his true feelings about the St. Louis Cardinals. Thought that was kind of interesting. Let me know what you guys thought about that. I thought he's being a baby. Just get over it. Make a better pitch. Look, you pitched well today. You get more credit for that. You pitched well today. You get the win. I know you've got some forgettable moments against the Cardinals from your past, but that's why I care about that. And in fairness, he was asked about it, I guess, so, he can tell his true feelings. Kershaw's 37. He's been around the game a long time. I think he's earned the opportunity and the right to speak his mind, and if people have a problem with it or want to make fun or whatever, he'll probably say, whatever, I don't really care. Have your reaction. But he was asked about it, and he said, yeah, Busch League. But I don't expect anything less from these guys is funny to me. Because, Matt Carpenter has since retired. Who was even around from that 2014 team? Is there any? There's nobody. Not a player, not a manager, not a coach. John Mozeliak, that's it. And I can tell you, he's not the one that's going over the pregame video board montage. I'd be surprised by that. Anyway, so that's what Kershaw had to say. He spoke out. Again, always in context. He was asked about it, so it's not like he just found a reporter and said, hey, here are my thoughts on what I saw. He was asked about it, but he answered, and apparently answered pretty honestly. So give me your thoughts on that in the comments below. Let's talk a little bit about Michael McGreevy from today's game, too. 6 innings, 4 runs. Not the start he wanted, for sure. Not the very beginning of the start that he wanted. Allowing some hard contact there from the jump. Got away with it in the first inning. That rocket to Arenado, I believe it was the first out. And then there was another one on the other side to Contreras. But the line drive to Arenado that he caught to his left, I want to check out. I want to see if I can find the StatCast on that because that thing was smoked. And Arenado just had a good first step to be able to get to it. I gotta see what that one was. Top exit velocity of the game. Muncy had one at 107. Ohtani had one at 106. So I guess that was neither because Ohtani had the double to begin the game. Mookie Betts, 103, the one that Arenado caught. Contreras caught the one off of Freeman's bat at 102.5. And then Teoscar Hernandez grounded out. 106.5 was the double that Ohtani hit to begin the game, first pitch. And then Muncy got him in the second inning for a base hit, 107 off the bat. So there was some loud contact against Michael McGreevy in the first couple of innings. Ohtani, 106, Betts, 103, Freeman, 102. And that was the first inning. Muncy, 107. Will Smith, 100.6, 104.8 for Edman with the RBI hit in the second inning. Ha-Seong Kim, only 98.8, but that was the triple that he hit. McGreevy definitely gave up some hard contact in this game, but he was able to kind of settle in a little bit as it went along. Not as much hard contact in his later innings, but certainly there early, they were squaring him up pretty good. And so think about the context of this for Michael McGreevy, right? Everybody's been starving to see this guy play, to see him pitch, to see him at the big league level. What you got against the Mets on May the 4th, a little over a month ago, he was fantastic. And late last season, in the opportunities he got in the big leagues, he was fantastic. Came in with a 1-some-odd ERA for his big league career. And the Dodgers were maybe the best lineup in baseball, one of the best and most deep lineups in baseball. was there this morning, and I asked Oliver Marmol just knowing his makeup, knowing the makeup of Michael McGreevy, what did Ollie look forward to about this matchup against the Dodgers? Obviously, kind of keeping in context the fact that you had already seen him do it against a really good lineup against the Mets in a meaningful situation. And Ollie's answer was the lefties. I want to see how he looks against the lefties in this lineup because the Dodgers have some really, really good lefties. Lefties had been a bit of a sore spot for McGreevy, but it also had been something he's worked on recently to try to get up to speed. And I would say probably a mixed bag in terms of the way it looked against lefties today. But okay, Ohtani got him, but that was the only time he got him. He settled in to get Ohtani in the at-bats that followed. Max Muncy goes 2 for 4 in the game. Obviously had the 107-mile-per-hour hit. Tommy Edman got him. So, there were some misses against lefties and something to build upon and grow upon. But I thought Michael McGreevy, to be able to gut it out for 6 and to get through that 6th inning and finish what his job looked like today, I thought that was encouraging, right? Because it very much could have gone the other way. Cardinals didn't win this game. They weren't really in the game as much as they wanted to be. But if you get some better performances from relievers, you actually were tacking on runs in the 5th, 6th, and 7th. The Cardinals scored a run in each of those innings, but the Dodgers scored a run in the 7th, and they also tacked on 2 in the 8th. So you just weren't able to really keep the game there to give the offense some level of confidence that you could come from behind and win it. So it happens, right? But I look at that and say McGreevy to get through 6 and really still give the Cardinals a chance to win. Against that lineup, I would call that perfectly suitable, and I want to see more of them. Personally, I would be making the call, and I don't know what they'll do, but I would roll the 6-man rotation during June, even through the off day. I wouldn't try to get sneaky and send McGreevy down and then call him back up in 15 days to fill in again. I would just leave him in. Because a couple of reasons. One, that 8th bullpen spot has been pretty irrelevant anyway. I just don't feel like the Cardinals are getting max usage out of it. They largely have a starting rotation that's getting deep enough into games. Even McGreevy today goes through 6. That's plenty. If your guys are getting you 6, and look, if there are some games in a row where the rotation isn't getting deep and suddenly you're starved in the bullpen, you feel like you're not going to be able to get through with the 7 relievers and the holding back another starter, basically, then, we cross that bridge. But I feel like they can do it. If I didn't tell you now, do you know for sure who was sent down today so that McGreevy could come up? Are you positive you could have told me that Rodri Munoz was on this roster before Sunday, that he wasn't currently in AAA? Because that's who was sent down on Sunday to make sure to bring up McGreevy for that roster spot. So, Rodri Munoz was on the team, is not really being used. Matt Swanson, he's still on the team, gave up some runs today. It happens, but he's not really being used a ton anyway. So if that's the spot you want to cycle through and make sure you've got a fresh arm at all times as the break glass in case of emergency guy, you could do that. I would keep McGreevy up, and I would just say that week that there's an off day, whether it's, the 13th or the 16th of June, I forget the date specifically, just let that be a week where everybody gets 2 extra days of rest. It'll be a once every 7-day schedule there for a turn through. Not the end of the world, especially for this rotation that you want to make sure they stay healthy and rested and ready to go. Liberatore, we know, was out of gas in his last outing, and so they responded accordingly. Eric Fetty, at times we talked about last year, maybe not, having a full tank at the end of a season, coming back from Korea in a little bit of a different circumstance to his major league season last year. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I think you can get away with it. I would go ahead and have McGreevy on that 6-man rotation all the way through June until you get to, I think it's the 3rd of July. There's an off day. I would roll it, and I would just take advantage of the off days that you get. Palante, we know, has been not performing as highly recently. The one thing is Sonny is maybe looking as good as we've seen him with the Cardinals, and so maybe that's one guy that you're not eager to wait any extra to get to see. But I think if you keep in mind the long range of the season, it's beneficial actually to have it play out that way. So that's my stance. I would just leave McGreevy in for the entire month of June and go from there. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. Saw a comment blaming Ollie's bullpen management for the loss today. We saw John King and we saw Matt Swanson both were tagged for. King 1 run. Swanson, I believe, gave up a couple of runs. And it was as the Cardinals were starting to kind of claw their way back. And so to have those guys combined for 3 innings and 3 runs allowed sort of tanked, whatever the momentum was potentially going to look like there to be able to climb back in as the Cardinals were scoring some runs. And I do totally understand the frustration with that, but that is the way that you have to manage it if you are Oliver Marmol. I really feel like maybe I shouldn't waste my time when it comes to comments from Twitter, but for the sake of my audience, if this is how you feel, where the comment was basically, for as good as Ollie managed the bullpen Saturday, he managed it that poorly on Sunday. If that's how you feel, let me reiterate, you have to use the relievers other than your top guys when you're trailing in a game, especially when it's by multiple runs. But even if it's down by 1, that is the cue to use your other relievers. John King, Matt Swanson, those types of guys. Period. The end. King and Swanson are the human beings that had to pitch in that game. It's not up for debate or discussion. You can disagree, but if you do, you are unfortunately wrong. And that's just the way it is. You cannot burn out the same 3 guys chasing games in June. Ollie knows that. I think most Cardinals fans know that, but in case you needed the reminder, no, the 7-3 loss today was not a result of Oliver Marmol's bullpen management, just to be totally clear. Cardinals offensively they had 11 hits in this game. You would have liked to have maybe had a little bit more oomph with runners in scoring position. They did go 3 for 10, but you have 10 opportunities. You only score 3 runs total. There were definitely some moments where they left some meat on the bone, for sure. And maybe that goes differently if I know there's a spot where Donovan struck out second and third, after Mason Wynn's double to drive in a run. Donovan had a chance there to really kind of change the complexion of the game, couldn't quite do it. And so certain things like that, certain moments like that, slipping away from the Cardinals. But Donnie was 2 for 5. Wilson was 2 for 4. Avon Herrera, 2 for 4. Burleson was 2 for 3. And that was another thing that was discussed this morning in Ollie's office. Just Alec Burleson, the patience that he's had to be able to recognize and identify pitches within the strike zone, to be able to do damage on the pitches that he is offering at in those early moments in the count, picking his spots, basically. Get into protect mode with 2 strikes, that's fine, but he's been a really good, over the last month or so, really good example of, making those adjustments and really trying to be particular, being a little more selective with the pitches he's trying to offer at and doing damage on the pitches that he does swing at. And then you get the lefty-lefty matchup today. It's not something that we have seen a ton from that part of the Cardinal bench, if you will, with Burleson and Gorman. But I asked Ollie what, he enjoyed potentially seeing play out about that matchup of Burleson and Kershaw, and just talked about seeing those aspects of his game that have been really improved recently in terms of his pitch selection, and see that play out against a guy like Kershaw who can manipulate pitches for sure. Doesn't have the same velo he used to have, but can still be a pitch maker with the best of them. And Burleson, I think, passed with flying colors today with a couple of knocks and a sacrifice RBI sacrifice fly in this one. So good to see from Burley. He's up to 767 on the OPS, and I would say he's a guy that you want to continue to see more playing time for. They may not love him in the outfield, but they'll stick him out there in right field for the time being, and I think that's a good way to get him into the games. And he does have a good arm, but you're just looking for a little bit more range. But you'll take it when he's hitting the way that he is right now. And against the lefty today, I was glad to see that, and I certainly think the Cardinals probably were as well. It was just good to see from Burley. The Cardinals, though, overall, just didn't take enough advantage of their opportunities, and they dropped this one 7-3. We're going to talk a little bit, though, about what was going on in the minor leagues, and make sure that we start by mentioning a very good performance on a rehab assignment from Saturday that I neglected, glossed over it, but now we're going to talk about it as we go down on the farm. It's time to go down on the farm. Brought to you by Hastings Layers Premium Eggs.
You'll be happier than a jackass eating thistle.
Huh? So it definitely did slip through the defenses on Sunday morning when I recorded my episode about Saturday's Cardinals affairs. Tink Hence was down at Palm Beach on Saturday and was very, very sharp in his most recent rehab effort. 2 2/3 innings, just allowed 1 hit, no runs, no walks, no nothing, no nonsense. 6 strikeouts for Tink Hence in 2 2/3 innings for the Palm Beach Cardinals, I believe it was. So that's low A, still rehabbing, right? We'll see him to Memphis. He's never pitched for Memphis, if I'm not mistaken. That's where he would have started the season, but was not healthy. But 2 2/3, no runs, no walks, just 1 hit, 6 Ks. And reading this from Kareem on Twitter from Saturday, his fastball was up 1.5 ticks from his previous rehab outings. He was averaging 95 miles per hour, 7 whiffs. Also mixed in a hard gyro slider, low 80s curveball with minimal depth, and is still finding a feel for his changeup. That's all according to Kareem. You can find him on Twitter at KareemSSN. He puts out some really good takes on all things minor leagues when it comes to the St. Louis Cardinals organization. So very good to see from Tink Hence. Quinn Matthews has been back on the rise. He's up now to Memphis, doing his thing up there for the AAA Redbirds as the Cardinals just try to find that pitching depth of the prospects to be back intact, as it was certainly something that you were lacking there in the early going, and still, wishing you had some guys. Cooper Jerpy had Tommy John, Sam Roberts had Tommy John, and so you've been dealing with some of that, but it is just good to see some of the very top prospects like Quinn Matthews, like Tink Hence getting back to health, and certainly I think that's a notable outcome from Tink on Saturday. So was brought up to me in the comments that I didn't talk about it yesterday, or this morning, rather, and I should have, and so I do apologize for that. Let's talk about some of the other minor league games going on Sunday. 92 winners were the Springfield Cardinals in 10 innings. That's right, 9-2 was the final. Yes, it was an extra inning game. The Springfield Cardinals put up a touchdown in the 10th, top of the 10th, and got that win over the Frisco Rough Riders. J.J. Weatherholt just keeps on keeping on. 2 for 3, reached base via walk. I believe there might have been a hit by pitch in there as well. Might be thinking of somebody else. Nevertheless, OPS is over 900 now for JJ. He's hitting 313. He has been an on-base fiend for the Springfield Cardinals, which is awesome to see. I think the power will continue to come, continue to grow. He's got that great opposite field power as well. Looking good. Leonardo Bernal, the catcher down there at AA, 3 for 4, reaching base 4 times. He walked as well and had his 10th double of the season. So that's great to see. Lesser day for Chase Davis and Joshua Baez, who combined to go 0 for 9. They did both drive in a run, but had a couple of strikeouts each. Jeremy Rivas, 2 for 5, a couple of runs driven in and a run scored in this one. So good to see that from the Springfield Cardinals. It took them a while to get the offense really going, but 9-2 after a 7-run top of the 10th. Max Rajic, by the way, the starting pitcher in that game, quality start. 6 innings, 2 runs allowed, no walks, 5 hits, 5 strikeouts. Did give up a home run. So Max Rajic, 4.24 ERA. He could be making his way toward maybe getting on the radar for Memphis sooner rather than later as well. But you've still got guys like Eshawn Henderson that I think are going to be ahead in the pecking order. Tekoa Roby. That is a very talented AA rotation for the Springfield Cardinals. And very soon you'll see more of those guys at Memphis. I bet if we talk within the next month, maybe even just a number of weeks before some of those changes happen. Let's talk about the Memphis Redbirds, though, before we get out of here. They fell 6-2, scoring both their runs in the 9th inning, in fact. Michael Ciani was good in this one once again. He's got an 814 OPS for AAA. 2 for 3, drove in a run, walked 2 times, and doubled in this game. So he is definitely continuing to move in a positive direction offensively. Would not mind to see him back up with the Cardinals at some point here. You kind of wonder, though, okay, where does the extra lefty bat fit in? But if you just kind of ignore handedness and say, he's a really good defender, he's putting bat to ball right now, and certainly would be somebody you would value off the bench as like a pinch hitter. He's kind of a utility knife in that regard. And you could also ask the question, is he more or less valuable to you than Jose Barrero? And I would make the case that I would probably prefer Ciani because Barrero, the reason that he's around is because of his ability to play all the outfield spots. He can play shortstop, but he's also right-handed, which fits a little bit better, maybe the Cardinals roster. But I don't really care about the infield stuff. Mason Wynn doesn't need a day off. He'll be fine, personally. Now, Barrero, he did start in center field today and did all right, but I think they're probably a little bit more trusting of Ciani's defense in those rare opportunities to get somebody else other than Victor Scott out there. And Victor has been going through it a little bit when it comes to his numbers offensively, and so it made sense against a tough lefty to give him a day here on Sunday. One more thing I want to mention, though, about Memphis. Zach Plesac was the starting pitcher for the Redbirds, and if that sounds like an unfamiliar name, it's because he just joined the organization. The Cardinals signed him. He's a former pitcher for the Guardians. I believe it was at the only place that he was. No, he's bounced around a little bit, was with the Los Angeles Angels organization as well last year. Just made a few starts, didn't pitch well. 2023 had sort of flamed out with Cleveland, did not pitch well, and believe he was injured as well. And so maybe coming off of the injury, things not going too great for him. But formerly a guy that was, able to get a number of outs. He's got nearly 500 big league innings. He's got a lifetime 4.31 ERA, and actually had to go the route earlier this season of the independent leagues, indie ball for the Atlantic League with the Long Island Ducks, I believe it. Yeah, the Long Island Ducks of the Atlantic League is where he was making some appearances and had a 2.84 ERA in 38 innings down there. Not a ton of strikeouts even in that league. So this is one of those acquisitions that you may not necessarily go anywhere, but I also have no problem with it. Some familiarity, obviously, there, formerly of the Cleveland organization. So I'm sure Rob Cerfolio is acutely aware of maybe the history of Zach Plesac. And I'll be curious to see if, just as sort of a reclamation project, the Cardinals can get anything out of him. I don't mind these types of moves ever because it's not low risk, it's a no risk acquisition. There's just no risk associated with adding a guy to Memphis in that rotation where you just see if something sticks, right? Guy that's had success in the past, I don't have any issue with it whatsoever. Glad the Cardinals are more willing to do that. There are a number of years where they would just never be in on guys like this. And that's not to say that, they should be always in on guys like this, because a lot of times the reason that they're, out of baseball is because they're not performing. And so there might not be a lot of meat left on the bone there. But I don't have any problem with the Cardinals picking up Plesac and seeing what he might have to offer. Vaulted right into AAA. 4 innings, 4 runs allowed, 6 hits, 2 walks, a couple of strikeouts. So a 9 ERA for the game on Sunday. Ryan Fernandez got hit around a little bit as well. But we'll see if Zach Plesac turns into anything. If nothing else, just like experienced depth, where if the Cardinals did have a rash of injuries to their rotation, you throw that guy out there and see what happens. And if he gets beat up a little bit, it's not like you're hurting the psyche of a prospect, that sort of thing. So Zach Plesac, recent signing by the Cardinals organization, got roughed up a little bit in his Memphis debut on Sunday, but nothing ventured, nothing gained on that front. And we'll see if he improves, if he remains in that rotation. I believe he's 31 years old. So there you have it. That'll do it, though, for this edition of the show. Appreciate you for indulging me in conversation about all of these Cardinals topics from Sunday. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on b-schaeff Daily. Peace.